We're the flagship program in this state, right? And
a bullshit, a bullshit, a bullshit, a bullshit.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Longhorn fans everywhere, and welcome back to another thrilling and always entertaining edition of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports, otherwise known as Dit Hole, for those of you who have been with us from the start. This is episode 60-ish. I've kind of lost count at this point. I am your host, Michael Wein. Monday, April 15th, officially tax day. Hopefully those of you that needed to pay your taxes. 10:38 p.m. We just completed a big draft episode that's kind of unique. You probably won't find a lot of similar episodes out there. So go listen to that. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel if you like what we do here, and share it with your friends who like sports. And if they're Longhorn fans, tell them about this show. But before we get into anything today, as we do have a fairly loaded show, Wednesday's show will be a bit more intensive, but today's show, I really like the topics that we have. The weekend gave us a lot that we can talk about related to Longhorn news on and off the field, on and off the court. We're sticking to basketball today, and we're going to talk some spring football. We have a special segment we've been waiting to do for a while, our official 5 breakout candidates coming out of spring, going into next year, which will probably update closer onto the season, but we're going to do that. And we'll probably talk a little bit about the second scrimmage that Texas had over the weekend. But before we get into any of that, let me welcome in my esteemed co-host, a Longhorn fan himself, a man that is prepping himself for a big first-round series against the Los Angeles Clippers as a Mavericks fan, a man that might go to Game 4 of that series at the American Airlines Center, as I understand it. Depending on the day and time, I might be able to go. Who knows? But anywho, that man would be Imy Nixon. Imy, what's up?
Man, I'm doing good. We just recorded some NFL draft content, so if you're into that, go check that out. We'd really appreciate that. It's a bit of a unique spin on draft content, I think, that you may like. So, but for this episode, man, I think in terms of Texas news, like we're in a great spot basketball wise. We went out and we upgraded. We'll get into it in a second, but man, I'm stoked with what Rodney Terry was able to do this weekend.
Yeah, and I think there's more coming. But before we get into that, we can't do a Texas Longhorns show today, Monday, April 15th, the Monday after the Masters tournament, without mentioning Scotty Scheffler, Texas alum and graduate,
Yep,
who won his second Masters in 3 years. Just your general take on Scotty Scheffler winning the Masters. He's now the third. It's the 5th Masters championship in Texas Longhorns history. You've got one with Spieth, you've got 2 with Crenshaw, and you've got 2 with Scheffler. Your take on Scheffler winning the Masters again?
Well, it was just, it's business as usual, man. Ho hum. Mistake free. Sunday, man. Like under pressure over and over again. Yeah, he just delivers and delivers and delivers over and over again. Um, every single one of those guys on the leaderboard near him faltered at one point or another,
Yep.
but he never did. And that was the difference.
And congratulations to you once again on having a better week than me in your picks. Now, Augusta did play quite a bit tougher in terms of the conditions than I think maybe some people thought. I mean, did you see the Friday scores?
Yeah.
With the wind? I think the cumulative was 326 over par, which is just crazy. But as you mentioned, like Scotty Scheffler, the word I use to describe it is unflappable. He's just the best right now. His ball striking, once again, was elite. Although early on yesterday, I thought he was a little off with his distance control with his irons. He was a little shaky at the beginning, but he dialed it in. The shot that stands out to me was number 9, the second shot into 9, where he just put it up on the slope and it rolled back and literally almost went in the hole for a birdie. And then on the back, when everyone else made mistakes, like I think it was
14.
Ober.
Pretty close.
Ober.
Oh,
Put
yeah.
it in the water on 11. There were just so many mistakes by some of the other guys on the leaderboard. Morikawa comes to mind. Although he didn't necessarily putt well yesterday, he ended up finishing better. I think if he was making some of his putts early on in the front, maybe he could have been a little bit closer. But Scheffler was going to be hard to beat because in the end, he didn't make any mistakes. He putt good enough to easily win the tournament. I mean, he won by 4 strokes. And he's just the best in the world right now. And you can make the argument that of all the Longhorn athletes out there in the professional ranks of any sport, he right now is the best of any of them relative to his competition in his sport. So that's a conversation for a different day, but Texas now has 3 separate players to win the Masters. It's more than any other school that's out there. Now, there are 3 others with 2 guys each that have won. And Stanford, I think, is one of those. I'm forgetting the other 2. I'd have to look it up. But regardless, good for Texas. And I think before it's all said and done, given what he's doing, only at the age of 27 years old, Scotty Scheffler might win. I don't think he's done winning green jackets. Let's just say it.
Yeah.
The next step for him is going to be getting the other majors. Like he's probably right up there on the list of guys who could go for the Grand Slam eventually, given what he's doing as just like an all-around player. There are other storylines in golf that we'll get to eventually. Closer to win, probably the PGA rolls around. But I did think it was appropriate to come out here and mention that, as we are Texas Longhorn fans, and he's part of the Longhorns. So we get to claim Scotty Scheffler, which is pretty nice. Anyways, let's get into our first segment today. Boy, Rodney Terry went ham in the portal yesterday. He surprised me with what he did in the portal. I knew Texas was going to have visitors on campus throughout this entire week, starting this weekend, including the 2 Indiana State guys that they got. But I didn't know the commitments were going to come in a wave like they did yesterday. It feels like Rodney Terry, given all of his time as an assistant coach under Rick Barnes and his time as an assistant, even under Chris Beard and some of the other coaches that have rolled through Texas, as one of the ace recruiters on the staff, is able to close on the guys that he wants in the portal pretty quickly. Like last year, I mean, when Shedrick got on campus, he committed very soon after that. Same thing with A's Miss. Like I think it's just he has a Kendall Weaver. Like, I think whatever the staff is telling these players, it's obviously working. And we knew that Texas was going to have to step up their portal game and their NIL game in basketball a little bit after what was a good year, but not a great year. Probably could have done more with that roster. It probably wasn't built perfectly. And there were some major flaws as we came to realize. But moving conferences now, Texas came away with 3 guys in the portal yesterday. And we're going to talk about all of them one by one. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with Larry. I mean, I mean, I don't know if you know, but there was a guy that was pretty good that came out of Indiana State named Larry. So,
Yeah. He might have, ended up as like a top 5 NBA player of all time.
yeah, something like that. I don't
Something
know.
like that.
I wouldn't know. I don't know.
I mean, Larry Bird, do you know of him? Like,
Yeah, I mean, doesn't ring a bell. No.
I mean, no, it doesn't ring a bell for me either, but he was pretty good back in his heyday. But go ahead. Julian Larry, 6'3" point guard from Indiana State. What do you think? How does he fit in here with Texas?
Well, the main thing that he will bring is on the ball defense right from the jump, like aggressive, like getting over ball screens, attack, like ball pressure on the ball, like just he will hound players in the SEC next year. Like there's no question about it. He will come in onto this Texas team and immediately make an impact with his defense. Was a low volume, very good 3-point shooter as well. Didn't shoot a lot of them, but shot 46% from 3-point range. I mean, he has the right mindset to fit right into this thing. I think he already has, the chemistry with
Jason Kent?
the other Indiana
Jason
State
Kent.
kid. Yeah. And be able to run their 2-man game stuff as well. Like I think it'll fit seamlessly.
Just imagine if Jason Kent's last name was Jason Kidd.
Yeah, I thought you said Jason Kidd at first. I was like, wait, what?
So you could have
Yeah.
Julian, Larry Bird, and Jason Kidd in Texas.
That'd be pretty crazy. Yeah,
that'd be pretty funny. You pretty much hit it right on the head. First of all, he's a product of Frisco High School Entrepreneurial Academy. So he's from Frisco, Texas. He's a Texas kid. Last year at Indiana State, he started 38 of 39 games, including the NIT. On their way to the NIT final where they lost the seat in Holland, which was a game between 2 teams that, in my opinion, no doubt should have made the tournament. They should have been in over teams like Virginia and a couple others, in my opinion, looking back on it now. But when you look at what he did this year, played 34 minutes per game in the Missouri Valley Conference, which is a very good mid-major conference, as we came to find out, with teams like Drake in that conference. I mean, the team that made the tournament. A lot of people picked Drake to win a game in the tournament, and for good reasons. Shot 53% from the field overall. Very efficient player. 46% from 3, as Imy mentioned, on lower volume, less than 3 attempts per game. But he's a very efficient, smart, high IQ basketball player. The thing I like about him most is he's more of that prototypical point guard. He's going to get to the basket. He's very explosive as an athlete, and he'll finish around the rim. Doesn't take a whole lot of jump shots. Isn't necessarily the most elite shot creator of all time, but he's very good around the rim, has a unique set of finishing skills. He's a good size point guard, 6'3", 6'2", 6'3"-ish. Better size than Max Hazemus. And he averaged pretty close to 5 assists per game last year, 4.8 assists per game. Thanks to his efforts, along with many others, the Sycamores won the Missouri Valley Conference regular season title and they advanced to the finals of the Missouri Valley Conference tournament where they lost to Drake. And they did lose to Seton Hall by 2 in a very competitive game of the NIT final. But he's an experienced player, really solid defensively. He's a fifth-year senior. That's a theme here. Texas got 3 fifth-year seniors, 3 really experienced guys. Experience is winning right now in college basketball, especially through the transfer portal. And I think he's a guy who, just like Max Hazemus was a year ago, will be able to bring that to the Texas backcourt, but just in a different way. He's not the microwave scorer that Hazemus is, but he brings high basketball IQ, the ability to knock down a shot from the outside, explosiveness as an athlete, good on-ball defender, and an efficient player that will finish around the rim. He's just a real solid player. I do think potentially Texas is going to look for a more on-ball point guard that's looking to score, and I'll talk about that later in this episode. They're going after someone else who's more of the scorer type. But Larry is a very solid get. Like he's just solid. On3 has him as a number 51 overall prospect in the portal. And there are 2,000 players in the portal. So he's really solid. And he's a Texas kid. Texas was able to get him. He'll fill in nicely for Tyrese Hunter. And in a world where they get this guy that I think they're going to get at the point guard position to pair with Larry, I think they'll complement each other perfectly. And Julian and Larry off the bench with Kendall Weaver. I mean, you talk about tons of energy off the bench. That is, especially defensively, I really love the sounds of that. So,
yeah, he's not a bird, but he's a dog.
Yeah, he's a Larry Dog.
Yep.
He's the cousin of Larry Bird, if you don't know by now. Yep. All right, let's move on to our next guy. His teammate, Jayson Kent, is tagging along with him to Texas. And he was actually the first one to make his commitment to Texas public. In a span of 6 hours, Texas got 3 portal commitments, something I've never seen before. I don't think even in football or any sport for that matter. But Jayson Kent was the first one to set it out there publicly. What do you know about Jayson Kent as a player?
Well, I think he provides very great size on the perimeter. Like just as a wing player, he's something that Texas didn't really have last year. Just provides versatility and can still bring a scoring punch offensively. Like now Texas can bring these lineups with multiple wings into the game and not have to worry about, oh, this guy can't shoot. Oh, this other guy can't shoot. He's not really a threat. They're not really going to guard him. That's not the case with this guy. He's a spot up shooter, and he has a little bit of off the dribble game as well.
Yeah, Kent's a very good player, and I think he'll be a good fit. You can play him at the 3. I think he's going to play more at the 4 for Texas, kind of like that stretch 4 that Dylan Mitchell was kind of last year. But I think Jayson Kent is a little bit more developed from a shooting standpoint as he's a 5th-year senior, whereas Dylan Mitchell is going to be in his 3rd year in college basketball next year if he doesn't go pro, and is still kind of developing. Obviously has more physical tools than Larry, but Larry is very solid. The thing I like about Larry...
Oh, you mean Kent?
Or Kent?
Yeah.
God damn. This Larry thing is messing me up.
God darn it, Larry.
The thing I like about Kent, or Jason Kidd, if you want to call him that, is he is excellent moving without the ball. Go watch his game. very good moving without the ball. And with these guards, Trey Johnson, who's a very solid playmaker, with Julian, Larry, and potentially another guy in that backcourt, I really like the thought of that. Like him as just on the wing, in the post, just cutting without the ball, using him in the pick and roll. Because when you look at his profile, he shot along with Larry. I mean, Indiana State was a very efficient offense last year, and these players were just a byproduct of that. Kent shot 64% from the field, most of that finishing around the rim. He's got a very solid touchdown there. And he shot 37% from three. Very good free throw shooter, too. At times, free throws were a problem last year for Texas, and both Larry and Kent will have no problems, I don't think, being good free throw shooters. He's 37%, not as good as Kent, but he shot a higher volume. Very good spot up shooter. And once again, fifth-year senior. Like experience. When you think about that Texas team from 2 years ago that went to the Elite Eight, what did they have? They had Jabari Rice, fifth-year senior. They had Marcus Carr, fifth-year senior. They had Timmy Allen. I mean, they had a bunch of older dudes, Christian Bishop, that all pretty much graduated after. These guys are more so one-year rentals. They won't have any college eligibility remaining after, but they're well worth it. They're very solid college basketball players. And I think Kent, coming to Texas, having some familiarity, being able to play in a similar style offense with one of his teammates in a good system with size, the ability to shoot, he'll fit right in, finish around the rim, kind of act as kind of a stretch four where Texas kind of lacked last year. Dylan Mitchell, lots of talent, but really hasn't developed truly into that stretch four type. Although he has more tools than Kent. Kent's just a very solid player. I mean, can't really argue with 13 points and 8 rebounds in a really solid league, the Missouri Valley Conference. On really, like, these two Indiana State kids just are really efficient, smart, high IQ basketball players, and they come from a winning program, and that's what you want in the portal. They pretty much check off all the boxes. They might not be special players, but they're good starts, very good starts. And who knows, maybe one of them elevates to another level at Texas. So I really like this Jayson Kent get. He's 6'8", 6'9". He's got good size. And now, and we'll talk about this a little more with our next guy, Texas can go bigger. They can play bigger lineups without having to sacrifice offense. Last year when they went bigger, they kind of had to sacrifice a little bit of offense. Now I don't think they're going to have to do that. Now that I think they have the versatility to play the style they really want to play. And they have better wing defenders now, perimeter defenders for sure. So really like Jayson Kent and Larry Bird. So with that being said, we got to address the third portal get. And this one was the biggest splash per se. And that was Tramon Mark from Arkansas, formerly of Houston, University of Houston. What do you know about Tramon Mark? What does he do for this Texas team?
Well, the name of the game, put the ball in the basket. I mean, bucket getter, certified. I mean, 16 points per game in the SEC conference with a lot of athleticism, a lot, like throughout, like with a lot of high level defense being played in that conference as well. Really impressive stuff. I mean, as you mentioned, the experience as well. That plays a part in it as well. He's polished and he knows how to get to his spots as well. Like he has a knack for knowing where he wants to be on the court to shoot that shot over the top. And that's what Texas needs. Just a little bit more offensive pop, a little bit more firepower. And he's going to bring that.
Yeah. Tramon Mark, he's a native of Dickinson, Texas. So he's another Texas kid along with Larry Bird. And he's ever since he came in, like he's been that prototypical wing, put the ball in the bucket, really good mid-range game off the dribble, can get to the rim and score around the rim. Averaged 16 points, led Arkansas in scoring last year. Also grabbed 4.5 rebounds, dished out 1.8 assists. Him along with Trey Johnson will go really well in this Texas backcourt. It's kind of like a duo scoring wing option that I really, really like. Tramon Mark, I expect big things from him. He's going to be a really good player. He's ranked in the top 20 on most transfer portal boards. He's a bigger get. And the interesting thing about him, to my knowledge, he didn't visit Texas. This, I guess, had been in the works for a while. Some guys go into the portal with a no contact tag attached to their name, meaning they don't want schools to call them because they already know where they're going to go. Most of those players probably enter the portal and say they have a coach leave and they're going to follow their coach to the next school. So they already kind of know, like, okay, I'm going with this coach, or they have a connection somewhere else and they're going to go there. Because, I mean, even before the portal opens,
People talk.
Yeah. And so I think that was probably the case with Mark. He knew he wanted to go back home, play closer to home, and he's a perfect fit for what Texas needs. They need a wing that can score. And now they're potentially going to have 2 or 3 of them. They're going to have Trey Johnson, who's a shooting guard wing type, a guy who you're only going to have probably for 1 year. So you got to capitalize on this opportunity.
Yeah.
I think he's a truly special player. I think he's got an NBA-ready game right now with his ability to shoot and just score at a really high level. People describe him as possibly the best pure scorer in this high school class. And if you watch the McDonald's All-American game, you probably understand why. I think with him and Tramon Mark, I don't want to go too far out on a limb here, but that's going to be really, really nice. Like at the very least, you now have wing scoring, you have more size out there, you have better defenders, you have more versatility, and you have the ability to go bigger lineups to match up with some of the athletes in the SEC than you did last year. You've upgraded in that department. You've also upgraded with your length in your on-ball defense. They've upgraded in a lot of different areas, even if it's just maybe more so slimmer upgrades in some areas. I think it'll make a bigger difference than some people think when it all comes together. Now, obviously, we have to see how the rest of the roster comes together, and we'll start to see that here in the next week or two as Terry continues to build it out. But really like what Texas did with this collection of 3 players to start out with.
Right. Yeah.
How many spots does Texas have left? Well, what are you going to say?
Well, over 650 players have entered the portal already, and I think only like 95 have committed, and 3 of them are to Texas. Like that's pretty dang good.
How many spots does Texas have left? People ask. Well, you have 2 freshmen coming in. Another piece of news over the weekend was that Cam Scott, who's top 35 prospect in the 2024 class, 6'5", 6'6", one of the best players in the state of South Carolina, if not the best player in the state of South Carolina, signed with Texas back in the fall. He asked out from his release. He asked out of his NLI, or his National Letter of Intent, to Texas. And and I think he was granted that. So he's going to go somewhere else. But I think there was reason for that. Now, recruiting is a different story on the high school end. As long as they keep Trey Johnson, I'm fine. And I think they will. But it does kind of stink to lose Cam Scott. But you do still bring in Nick Cody, a power forward, one of the better players in the state of Texas, and Trey Johnson, another kid who's a top 5 player in the country.
Yep.
You bring in these 3 transfers, okay? You don't really have a whole lot else returning aside from Kendall Weaver and Zarek Onyema, who might end up going into the portal. We'll see. But for right now, he's on the roster. You have Caden Shedrick, you have Kendall Weaver, and you have Zarek Onyema, the 3 transfers and the 2 freshmen. So you really have like 3 or 4 spots open here to play with in reality when you really think about it, because of the news that we got this afternoon, which was Dylan Mitchell's going into the portal and Tyrese Hunter is going into the portal. So, Imy, do you have any thoughts on those 2 players entering the portal?
Well, for me, I'm particularly intrigued about Tyrese Hunter. He had high expectations going into this past year, and things just didn't really seem to click for him this year for one reason or another. He's a guy that I think has a ton of talent, and depending on where he goes, I think he can. I mean, there's a world where he just finds it, and all of a sudden he's averaging 18 a game. Like, I can definitely see that world.
Absolutely. Yeah. First of all, Tyrese Hunter, he gets a lot of flack from Texas fans because, like you mentioned, especially this past year, he never really seemed to find over his 2 years at Texas kind of the level people thought he would be, coming off being Big 12 Freshman of the Year his freshman year at Iowa State, right? He never really developed into that lead scorer for Texas, at least on a consistent level. He was really solid defensively, but people gave him crap about his cramping issues, his inconsistency offensively, some of the turnovers that surfaced later on this past year, some of which potentially cost Texas in a couple games. Just never really found the consistency, but really good player, like really good college player. He's proven that. I remember the Gonzaga game early on last year, not this past year, but the year before at Moody. They welcomed in that Gonzaga team with Drew Timme, and they blew the doors off of them. I mean, it was one of the first games at the Moody Center. It was a big non-conference game. And I remember in that game, Tyrese Hunter just torched. I mean, he just torched Gonzaga. And that was like the first sign that we got that season of Texas potentially being a team that could go as far as they did.
Yeah.
And he had games like that. Like, you remember the Baylor game earlier this year where he was Texas's best player in that game. He provided the energy, and he hit the shot that got them over the top in one of their more important wins of the season. I think he gets a little bit too much flack because I do think he's still a solid player at Texas. Didn't achieve the expectations that even I had for him. But if he goes somewhere else, as you mentioned, where he has the opportunity to be the lead guard, to be kind of the main offensive creator, to be the lead,
The engine
that drives the car, the engine that drives,
that
the
stirs
boat,
the drink.
that stirs
like
the
that.
drink. Yes. He can be really, he can have the final year in school and kind of put himself more into the NBA draft conversations for next year than maybe more so than he is right now. Because when you look at his career in Texas, he was playing with Marcus Carr, who was more of the lead guard. Like, he just was playing with Max Abmas, who was a lead guard, the offensive initiator. He needs to go back to a place where he can be that. Now, on Dylan Mitchell's side of things, your thoughts on his NBA viability right now, or if you think he should stay in college another year?
Well, I think defensively, there's definitely a lot to like for
Yes.
sure. Offensively, though, I think the vertical leaping ability is off the charts. Obviously, the vertical threat he provides, the alley oop target, someone in the dunker spot lurking, kind of a la Aaron Gordon almost. But I think the bottom line is, I think with his build, he has to get strong. He not stronger, but the shooting is the main thing.
Yes.
I think if he gets that jump shot to where he's even a league average 3-point shooter, he'll have a solid NBA career where he's, averaging 25 minutes a game. Like he has that in him. I just think for right now he's a little bit far from that.
Yeah,
So I think it would be good for him to stay in college personally.
I agree. Now, if he does get word that a team's really high on him, just his physical tools, what he is already as a defensive player, a rebounder, an athletic wing, he might go. Like, he legitimately might go and just rely on the fact that he could develop into that shooter eventually at the NBA level.
Yeah.
But I think realistically, it'd be better suit him to stay in college one more year, and maybe he can go somewhere else and become a better shooter. A point where you can say, okay, he might still be a little bit underdeveloped as an offensive player, as a shooter, but he's at least now shown that he can be it. And so I think I'd watch out for maybe a Florida school on Dylan Mitchell, as that's where he's originally from the state of Florida. He was a McDonald's All-American. He's one of like 11 or 12 former McDonald's All-Americans that are now in the portal. So a lot of talent to be had out there. But either way, I wish both Tyrese Hunter and Dylan Mitchell the best moving forward. I want to see them succeed. And now Texas has 0 of the players left from their Elite Eight team 2 years ago. So
Very interesting.
putting that out there. That's the world we live in nowadays. College basketball, college athletics. Like it or not. Okay. One more note on the Texas basketball front, and we'll continue to have conversations throughout the next couple weeks on the portal from a Texas standpoint and from a more national perspective. But Jordan Pope is visiting tomorrow. Now, if you don't know who Jordan Pope is, look him up. He's an Oregon State transfer. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. Last year, he averaged 17.6 points per game, 3.5 assists per game, shot 45% from the field, and is just a scorer. Like, he is a bucket. Now, his plan right now is to visit Texas tomorrow, and then tentatively he has a visit scheduled to Texas A&M on Thursday. The interesting thing about that is Wade Taylor, the fourth, their lead guard for the Aggies, has entered the portal. But at the same time, Texas has a need for another guard given Tyrese Hunter entered the portal. Reports from 24/7 are that Texas is perceived to be initially the leader for Jordan Pope, as there seems to be mutual interest there. I'm hoping that Texas can close the deal on Jordan Pope, because if we come to Wednesday's episode and we've got Jordan Pope, Trey Johnson, and Tramon Mark as our backcourt, along with Julian, Larry, and Kendall Weaver, I really like the sounds of that, man. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds really good.
Go watch Jordan Pope just in case. I can send you a quick clip, just in case we have to talk about him on Wednesday. I think there's a good chance. I think the door's wide open now that Tyrese Hunter entered the portal. Okay.
Yeah.
And then there will be some other visitors throughout the week. Texas probably needs another guy in addition to Pope, maybe two other guys in addition to Pope. There's a big from Oklahoma State. His name is Brandon Garrison. He's a former McDonald's All-American. Really solid, good rebounder, good around the rim, good shot blocker. He paired well with Caden Shedrick. The only thing about him is he's not really a floor spacer. And I think Texas could use a floor spacer at the 5 spot. More of a floor spacer than Shedrick or Garrison would provide. You're probably not going to find a Dylan DeSue that's going to shoot 50% from 3 in this portal. But who knows? Maybe the plan is, let's get Garrison. Let's pair him with Shedrick just for depth minimum, like 2 good bigs that are good around the rim, good defensively. And then we'll go get kind of our stretch big, because they have 3 spots open. So they could do that. And if Zarek Onyema ends up transferring, that would open up another spot. And Nick Cody's a guy who's a top 40 player in the state of Texas, one of the better power forwards in the state, if not the best. But if I had to guess, he's probably going to take a red shirt year. Like, I don't think he's one of the guys who's ready right away. So I don't know. That's kind of the situation. Those are the 2 big names I know right now. But I'll tell you this. If they get Jordan Pope, I will be thoroughly pleased. Not that I'm not already, but I mean, we might get into arousal territory.
That would be huge for sure.
That would be, I think he's on the level of kind of like a Marcus Carr with his ability to score. And he's got 2 years of eligibility left, which would be big because he could come back next year and be your lead guard. And when you look at kind of what they have right now with 3 seniors that they've already gotten in the portal, plus Trey Johnson, who's probably going to the NBA after this year, plus Caden Shedrick, who's in his last year of eligibility, it'd be nice to have a player or 2 that you can have coming back next year, right? So I think if they were to get Brandon Garrison and Jordan Pope, that would give them that. It'd give them some stability for next year, along with Kendall Weaver, who will be back too. Right. So that being said, who wants to talk some football? We're going to do our breakout candidates here for Texas. Now we're in the last week of spring practice. We've got the spring game on Saturday. Very exciting stuff. We'll talk more about that on Wednesday. But we're going to go back and forth on our breakout candidates. So I'll let you start us off.
The first one, I think it's not really a off the radar one. Like it's one that you look at this Texas roster and he jumps out right away. And that's Anthony Hill Jr. I think, well, for one, freshman to sophomore jump, there's a expected leap there to be made, but I think he'll go beyond that. I think with how he can be used against SEC defenses or against SEC offenses, excuse me, I think his game is more suited for SEC style of play. I'd argue. Um, you can with him as a linebacker in blitz packages and throwing him in on the edge every once in a while. Like you can really mix it up with him, and I see him as a guy who could reach 7, 8 sacks, get a ton of pressures, just wreak havoc in the backfield, and I mean he has the ability to just do it all, man. There's a scenario where he turns into a Micah Parsons type of player, which is crazy to think about. There's still a long way to go for that, but he has the mold for it.
Yeah, I mean, he's got everything you need to be an all SEC conference caliber player. It's so exciting that we get Anthony Hill on campus for at least 2 more years. You can use him in so many different ways. Like we saw early on last year when he wasn't necessarily playing consistently yet, but in that Alabama game, how special he was as a pass rusher when they used him that way. I think with Johnny Nansen, the new linebackers coach, you're going to see more of that. And that could really set him up for the kind of breakout campaign that you're talking about. Either way, though, he's going to take a massive step. I think he's going to be a top 3 player on this team next year, potentially the best player on this team next year.
Yeah.
So, and that's saying something given what Kelvin Banks is.
Yeah, what he already is.
Yeah, exactly. I could put Anthony Hill on my list, but I'm not going to do it because I'll let you have it. My breakout player, and we might have the same viewpoint here. So we already talked about it a little bit earlier. Malik Muhammad, Manny Muhammad. You already see it. Like you're already seeing it in spring practice. You're already seeing it in the scrimmage. Had an interception of Arch Manning in the scrimmage on Saturday. Was described as the best player on the field for Texas in that scrimmage. He's been singled out by Sark like 3 or 4 straight weeks. We saw him really come on at the end of last year, playing in place of Ryan Watts at times, who was hurt. Borderline 5-star prospect from the state of Texas. Just really good. Ball hawking skills, good fundamentally. He's, I think, the next star cornerback for Texas. They haven't had one of those in a while. I think he's going to start opposite either Terrence Brooks or Gavin Holmes at the corner spot. And I think he'll be, I mean, they have Derek Williams, they have Andrew Makuba, they have a lot of good talent in this secondary, but I think he's going to break out to the point where I think he'll be viewed as the best player in the secondary. He's just so solid from a pass coverage standpoint. And he's also pretty good in run defense. He's just a really good player. And that's why you recruit these super blue chip prospects in the state of Texas. Guys like Manny Muhammad, who I think had the potential to be all SEC second team guys this year as second year players, which is really exciting. And Manny Muhammad and Anthony Hill both come from that historic 2023 recruiting class that could end up being like legitimately something historic for Texas in this program. If Arch is what we think he is, if CJ Baxter turns into maybe, one of the better running backs that we've seen at Texas, there seems to be a trend there. as Sark pretty much always has, in a 1,000-yard rusher. I think he has the talent to do so. If Jonte Cook breaks out, like this class, when you look back on it, what we're starting to hear about Trevor Gooseby, I mean, it's got a chance to be really damn good.
Yeah, I agree. I had him on my list as well. The thing about Malik Muhammad is, if the strength of this team, obviously last year, was the run defense. Obviously, the pass defense left some to be desired. But if this team is going to take the next step, which we expect them to, in terms of overall defense, he's gonna be a main catalyst in that. There's no question about it. He's already shown it on the field and gotten the eye of every single coach on this team, put everyone on notice. And I think as long as he stays healthy, man, he's right there. This is his time.
Okay, so you had Anthony Hill and Malik Muhammad. I've had Malik Muhammad. I consider Anthony Hill also. He's going to break out in a way. He's just not on this list. I want to talk about some other players. My second player, I'll stick to the secondary and then we'll move to other places. It's going to be Jelani McDonald. If you're not familiar, he's versatile. I think he's firmly in the boat on the 2 deep at safety. He's got all the physical tools. Now, he was previously split between linebacker, safety, and potentially cornerback when he first arrived in Austin. But now Blake Gideon, the safeties coach, has really kind of taken charge and kind of molding him into a big-time ball player at that safety position. That's where he's playing mostly in spring practice. 6'2", good size, opportunity to crack the rotation. I think he will. Look, I mean, Derek Williams will probably take another leap. I think Andrew Makuba will be good. I think in the time that Jelani McDonald gets, though, you're going to see those flashes. He's got all the physical tools, really highly touted as a prospect. The thing is, though, with him is he's going to have to fight off potentially Xavier Filsaime. So it's a little bit of a wild card pick here, but I do think Jelani McDonald, with what I'm hearing out of camp, could be really something special for Texas. And just to double check on his recruiting profile, I'm pretty solid knowing this stuff, but sometimes I get mixed up. Out of Waco Connolly. So same school as Kobe Black from this past year's recruiting class in the 2023 recruiting class. Again, he's another guy in that 2023 recruiting class as kind of a high 4-star prospect that I think is potentially going to develop and can develop into a day 2 guy in the NFL. He's got the size, he's got the athleticism, he's got everything you need. It's just a matter of what position he's going to settle into at the college level. But I think he's going to break out. I think he's going to make some plays this year. And he's got pretty much everything. One of the things was, and I know you can say this a lot about a lot of super blue chips, he was star track. I mean, he started in track too at the high school level. So he's got a lot of athletic prowess, and I think he's going to do some good things at Texas, given his explosive athleticism. Part of that 2023 recruiting class, that's a theme in these breakout players. A lot of the freshmen from last year that didn't get to play a whole lot or just didn't contribute a whole lot, we're seeing now through our first 2 picks on each side, all 2023 recruiting class guys.
Yeah.
Pretty insane. All right, who's your third guy?
My third guy is going to be Trey Moore, the transfer from UTSA. I think from everything we've heard from spring, this guy is ready to ball out, man. You look at the production he had at UTSA. You look at just the tape in general. I think there's another level that he is yet to reach, and I think this is the year he's going to do it. I really do think that. And there was a reason Texas wanted him so bad. They saw this guy as someone they could unlock more from, and I think it's already happening before our eyes.
Like it. I like it. He's not on my list, but I like it. I actually have another edge on my list. This is my last defensive player. I went with Ethan Burke. He kind of broke onto the scene last year. I mean, the game I think about was Alabama. He was just in the backfield all day long in that Alabama game. He was probably the best defensive player Texas had in that game, aside from Anthony Hill. But the reason I choose Ethan Burke, and look, he had a really good sophomore campaign. Westlake kid, 5.5 sacks last year. Good player, like already a really good player. Kind of already broke out, but I think he's gonna like take it to another level. I could see him being given now the firepower that Texas has opposite him with Tramon and Colin Simmons. I could see him being even better this year. I think he could put himself into conversations of being like a high day two pick next year. If he does what I think he's going to do. An 8.5, 9 sack campaign in the SEC for him would probably put him into those conversations. He's got the tools. I think he's going to cause chaos in the SEC. And he's pretty solid as a run defender too. I look for Ethan Burke to have a big year. But any of the edge guys, I mean, Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, Ethan Burke, even a Baron Sorrell.
Yeah, I considered him.
You can't really go wrong. And I'll continue to stress this, where Texas might lack right now on the interior. I think they got better in the secondary and they're better on the edge.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's my third guy. All right, give us one more, and then I'll give you my last two.
All right. My next guy is another one on the defense. Alfred Collins,
Okay.
defensive lineman. I think, we mentioned him on our last episode as someone who has the opportunity to, in terms of being the guy on the interior, right, as of right now at least. I think he can, he has big shoes to fill, obviously, but I think he can do a good job of that. And he was in that room with those guys, saw how they worked and what it took to break out like they did. And I think he's ready to do the same thing.
Yeah. The hope is that he does. If he does, that would be huge for Texas. He's shown flashes.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just wishful thinking on my part, but
no,
yeah.
I mean, it's not. I mean, maybe in some ways, but I mean, I think all Texas fans have that. They have that wishful thinking because they know he's got the tools. He has the talent.
Yeah.
It's all packaged up, kind of like Byron Murphy, right? In a way. They just got to get it out on a consistent basis. He's shown flashes. Just be more consistent. You don't even have to be All-American Byron Murphy, T'Vondre Sweat level dominant, as I don't think he will be. That's not reasonable to ask. But
yeah,
he can put himself, and it's a big year for him. He's in his contract year. He's coming back for a 5th year. Again, he's gotten playing time the past 2 years, showed it sparingly, needs to be more consistent, especially as a run defender. So I'm hoping that happens. Like, of all the guys that we talked about, he'd be on my top 3 of guys that for this
Deep
Texas team to really get to elite level, winning national championship level, if he was to be that guy that broke out and had, say, an all SEC caliber campaign, that would put Texas into like, I mean, they're already going to be in that conversation, but it would cement their spot there.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of defense here.
Yeah.
I like it. But I will
love
just
our defense right now.
I will just say this. I have two offensive players in mind that I want to mention here. First one is Cam Williams. He's going to be presumably the right tackle this year. He's slotting in for Christian Jones. If you don't know a lot about Cam Williams, he's from the 2022 Pancake Factory recruiting class. A recruiting class that had Kelvin Banks and DJ Campbell. Pretty special offensive line class. From Duncanville High School, was a teammate of Colin Simmons and all the other Duncanville guys, Alex January. He's very, very physically intriguing, if that's the word. 6'5", just a monster. I don't know his exact weight. Probably between 365, 370. He's a big guy. He was 4-star prospect, class of 2022. I just think he's going to be – he's already looked good in parts last year, and in the spring he's been solid. I think he's got room to grow. He showed some inconsistency, but he's got the physicality. And he was actually, when he got time, among like the better graded pass protectors in college football last season. Small sample size, but that's a good sign for a breakout this coming season. I think he'll be in the conversation of breakout players offensively. And if he breaks out, this offensive line just across the board is going to be one of the best in college football, legitimately. It could already be that, but that would take it to like another level. And then Jonte Cook. I think Jonte Cook is in for a big year once again from that 2023 recruiting class out of DeSoto High School. Things, as I understand it, haven't fully come together just yet throughout the spring. He did have a touchdown on Saturday in the scrimmage. Really smooth route runner, fast, checks all the physical boxes as a wide receiver. You can play him in the slot. You can play him outside. I think he will start for Texas, though. And as a result of that, I think given he's been on campus and Silas Bolden hasn't, Matthew Bolden hasn't, Silas Bolden hasn't. He's had a little bit more time to develop that chemistry with Quinn Ewers, and I think he'll have a big year. And then a couple others just on an ancillary level that I think could break out offensively, aside from Quinn Ewers, if you think he's going to take that next step. I think Gunnar Helm could have a pretty big year from a tight end standpoint.
Yeah.
Good pass catcher, good blocker, just really solid player. And I think Jaden Blue at the running back position could really have a special year. I think that battle between CJ Baxter and Jaden Blue is more interesting than people think. I think a lot of people presume that CJ Baxter is number 1 and Jaden Blue is number 2. I'm not so sure about that. I think it's more 1A, 1B kind of situation. I think Texas is going to look to get both those guys their fair share of reps.
Yeah, and that could flip at any moment too.
Yeah, exactly.
CJ's had ball security concerns, so if those come up again, Jaden Blue might become the guy.
And the thing that you've heard about Jaden Blue in the spring is that he's really impressed out of the backfield as a pass catching threat. And so, we saw him catch a touchdown in that Oklahoma State game. He was out in the flat, but he got the ball and he got in the end zone. It was pretty self-explanatory, but he can do that for you. Like, he can catch the ball and create yards after the catch. He was a guy that last year, in the time that he got, was better than a freshman CJ Baxter. He just was. Baxter got a lot better towards the end of the season, but from a number standpoint, Blue averaged over 6 yards per carry, and Baxter was under 5 yards per carry. So he was just better. I think he'll have a big year. Not to say CJ Baxter won't, but I think Jaden Blue could be like a legitimate breakout kind of candidate. This was a guy that last year thought about transferring, but he stuck with it. He sat behind Jonathan. He came into this past year behind Jonathan Brooks, behind CJ Baxter, right from the get-go. And he stayed the course, got his reps when he could. Not to our liking, not to anybody's liking, but he got his chance when Jonathan Brooks went down. And sometimes it kind of, works out that way.
Yeah.
He got rewarded for it, for sticking through and not transferring. And I think he could have a big year. Are there any other names that I'm certain there are other names you could throw into this conversation. But before we go, anything else? Anything you wanted to know from a Texas spring football practice standpoint that before we go here?
I guess just keep filling me in on Quinn and Arch. I'm interested to hear some of the updates on that.
Here's how I would describe it. Quinn in this past Saturday's scrimmage looked the best that he's ever looked at Texas. Just really good. He's taking that next step, I think. How much of a next step? Yet to be seen. Remember, in these practices, you can't hit the quarterback. So he's not necessarily like worried about being hit or actually being sacked, throwing under like legitimate pressure.
Yeah.
But they are getting after it. They are kind of getting after him. He does feel the pressure. They won't hit him, but he will feel it. But from what I understand, like, he's just standing strong in the pocket, making the throws, accuracy, not turning the ball over, and just really has taken command of this offense.
Yeah.
On another level. Still needs to find the chemistry with some of these new receivers, but they're working through that. And this defense has played well in spring. Like, they're playing against talented defense. So Quinn, I think you have reason to be excited about Quinn. And then, as I said about Arch last episode, he's impressed people with his spring. He's a lot better than he was last year. Texas feels like if he has to play in a game or two this year, that they will be completely fine. They feel like he's ready if they need him. But I think he's been more just good in practice than very good or great. Mm-hmm. He's had a couple great days, but in this past scrimmage, I don't think it was his best, but it also wasn't bad. Like, there's no reason to panic. So, and keep in mind, like, he's not playing with the first string offense per se. So he's playing behind the second team O-line, a lot of second teamers. Not that the second teamers at Texas are bad. Like, this team is deep, but just something to consider. The quarterback room, though, out of everything is something that Texas fans just shouldn't worry about right now. It's
Yeah, I'm not worried. Definitely not.
I know,
Yeah.
I know you aren't, but I'm just saying, like, the reason it gets attention is because of the names in that room,
Yeah.
and rightfully so. The good thing is we're not seeing practice reports that are saying, like, we haven't seen a practice report this spring from any source that said Quinn looks terrible. He threw 4 picks in this practice, or Arch looks awful. He threw 2 picks and had a fumble. Like, we're not hearing anything bad on the quarterbacks, which is excellent. And you'd rather, be hearing all positives for the most part than some of those negatives that
Yeah.
some of these other teams around the country dealing with those issues right now. And I think overall, Texas will have a talented quarterback with Sark. As long as they have Sark, they'll have a talented quarterback room, whether that's a portal guy or someone they recruit. They will have a talented quarterback room. It's just going to be about Sark and his development of those quarterbacks. But with all that being said, anything else?
No, I
Oh,
think that's it, man.
well, the last thing I'll say is just keep an eye on those 2 freshmen that I mentioned last episode. I'm not going to say that both of them are going to start, but there's a better chance that both of them start based on what I'm hearing than I ever thought there would be 4 weeks ago.
Wow.
That's why you recruit these guys.
Yeah.
They're different. Colin Simmons and Ryan Wingo. So yeah, that's going to do it for this episode of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. Thank you guys for tuning in. 4 viewers at 11:48 p.m. That's pretty good. A lot of Texas basketball
That's my
conversation.
owls out here.
Yep. A lot of Texas basketball conversation. I think a lot of you enjoyed that. We'll have more portal nuggets. We forgot to do it, so let's just do it now. Yeah, we're going to have lots more portal nuggets as the football transfer portal opens for 2 weeks starting tomorrow. So we'll have our eye on defensive line for Texas. Just keep an eye out. If one of those Michigan guys wanders into the portal, I don't know. It's going to get interesting. But keep your eye out for that. And keep an eye out for more episodes coming at you on Wednesday. We're going to have a loaded one on Wednesday. Probably going to talk some Texas baseball, which we haven't in a while. More Texas basketball, more Texas football. So get ready for it. But until then, hook 'em horns. Enjoy your night. Enjoy your Tuesday. Enjoy the NBA play-in tournament. And we will see you next time. Peace.